Hello and welcome to NewsHour. It's coming to you live from the BBC World Service studios in central London. I'm Tim Franks. We're beginning with the soaring price of oil. At one point today, Brent crude hit more than $126 a barrel, a level not seen for 4 years after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And yet, you might be wondering how come. After all, aren't open hostilities between the US and Iran currently on hold? And isn't it also the case that nothing much has changed when it comes to the blockade by both Iran and the US of that critical waterway, the Strait of Hormuz? Well, both those things are true. But so it is also true that the markets do not just react to events. They react to news and rumours and hints. And the latest hint, at least according to a report on the Axios News website, is that the US military is about to brief President Trump on a set of plans for a new wave of strikes on Iran, which in turn has prompted warnings of a ferocious backlash from the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. The oil price is volatile. The trend, though, is sharply up over time, and that is feeding through into prices around the world, places such as the Philippines and Southeast Asia, where Danilo Arao is a journalist.
Well, the immediate effect is that our public transportation has been severely compromised. We see very, very few jeepneys, buses, and taxis plying their routes. Jeepneys are World War II vintage vehicles. We use that to transport people. Anecdotal evidence would even show that there are jeepney drivers who earn as much as $50 cents only, compared to the past where sometimes they could earn as much as dollars per day, and that would be on a very bad day. Of course, commuters or those who travel using public transportation are very much affected, and even car owners or motorists, sometimes they are very much discouraged from using their own private vehicles because of runaway prices in gasoline and diesel. And for households, we use mainly here liquefied petroleum gas or LPG. That has also increased substantially. I just refilled our own LPG here at home and I noticed something like a 200 peso increase. So that translates to more than $3 increase in just a few weeks. So it's very much depressing for many people, especially those who live a hand-to-mouth existence.
And that was Danilo Arao, a journalist based in the Philippines. From an emerging economy to a developed economy, Ireland is a relatively rich member of the European Union, and yet it has seen angry and very disruptive protests and blockades over surging fuel prices. On Wednesday, the Irish government announced a further package of support for workers and businesses, including curbs on the excise duty, in other words, the tax which the government charges on diesel and petrol. Timmy Dooley is a minister in the Irish government with, among other responsibilities, the energy brief. How hard has Ireland been hit by the war?
Like every other country, I suppose, around the world, particularly in the Western world, we have seen a very significant increase in fuel prices. That impacts us principally, I suppose, in the areas of food production. As you know, we're a very significant exporter of beef and dairy products. We export 90% of what we produce. So we have a large food production sector, and also smaller on the fishery side, but equally impacted by the spiralling costs. And you've rightly identified that in the case of the Mart gas oil, which is used in the agricultural sector, it has relatively low levels of taxes applied to it because it's part of, as I said, of our food production. But even at that, farmers and contractors have seen an increase of somewhere close to almost 100%. Last year, Mart oil would have been somewhat less than €1, sometimes 80 cents, and now we've seen it at almost twice that. So the government has intervened with a significant package of measures to assist that sector, but also reduced excise and taxes on the use of petrol and diesel in the general economy. So in the case of petrol, we've reduced it by 27 cents. In the case of marked gas oil, or sorry, not marked gas oil, the white diesel that's used in main transportation by 32 cent. And we've also then given support to the haulage sector, so the trucking sector, which is critically important for moving food from the primary producer, and also assisting us with the export of goods outside of the state.
I mean, presumably, and I'm aware that there's been, I'm sure you're far more aware than me, that there's been criticism that you've been sort of rather slow to move to this point, because there have been very angry protests that have snarled up Ireland for a long time ahead of this. That, look, I mean, this is going to be expensive for you. There will be people who will be saying it's not enough, but it will certainly be expensive, and that it's frankly unsustainable. And, with people saying that this oil prices could well go further, and also that it could last for that much longer. I mean, it's really tough to know what sort of levers you've got to pull.
It is, and of course, opposition parties will always indicate that it's not enough and that it wasn't quick enough. But we reacted very quickly. We brought in an initial package of measures at a cost to the state of about 250 million, which reduced prices to consumers a little bit. But within a matter of days, the international price of oil shot up again. So we reacted, and we worked with the various different representative bodies. And just last week, we've announced an enhanced package. But the enhanced package is a response to the continued increase in the price of oil. Now, this package, total effect of 750 million, we believe will cover the level of supports out to July of this year, both in the farming, the fishing, and in the road haulage sector. And that's kind of peak period for production, particularly in the farming sector, in terms of the collection of food that's stored for animals for the winter period through the cutting of hay and silage. And then we'll also look at the harvest period as well. So what we're trying to do, I suppose, is be dynamically responsive to the challenge that continues to be thrown at us. But you're right in identifying there is nobody has a crystal ball as to when or how quickly events either change or terminate in the Middle East.
No, indeed. Do you think that when it comes to it, though, and I realise you're sort of trying to deal with the emergency right now, that questions will be asked about just whether economies such as yours were just too exposed to this type of energy shock? I mean, people may not have predicted that there was going to be a war exactly now that was going to do this, but I mean, it has left you once again, I mean, just a few years after the Russian invasion, full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, incredibly exposed to an energy shock.
You're absolutely right, and we're mindful of that and have been for some time, which is why we have had a very strong programme to decarbonise our economic activity. We have a strong government programme now that is bringing renewables onto our electricity grid, where we're effectively electrifying our economy.
And that was Timmy Dooley, a minister in the Irish government, with the Brief for Energy, among other things that he looks after. One concern is that if a shooting war in the Middle East breaks out again, the mayhem could spread as it did before, as Iran, despite being vastly outgunned by the US and Israeli militaries, can still inflict considerable damage and disruption around the region. British forces at just one military base in the Middle East have shot down more than 100 drones since the war with Iran began. Before the ceasefire, they and US forces at the base were being targeted by nearly 30 drones and missiles a day. Jonathan Beale is the BBC's defence correspondent and the first to visit this base since the conflict started, to talk to the young RAF regiment gunners who helped save both British and American lives.
Iran is left.
This military flight is on its way to a coalition base in the Middle East which houses both US and British forces. It has been one of the most heavily targeted bases in the region since this conflict began. We can't say exactly where it is, other than it's somewhere in Iraq.
They might have it coming.
Despite a ceasefire, it's soon clear the threat hasn't gone away.
I believe fireworks mid distance 2 o'clock. Almost like ground explosions. Yeah, visual.
Just before landing, a drone's been spotted, followed by explosions.
They are still calling things. So everyone obviously be ready for bunker calls when we're on the deck. Roger.
Roger that.
This time it's aimed at Iraqi forces nearby.
Yeah, there's the crater just to the left. Got it.
But on the ground, there's evidence this base has been hit too.
It's been cleared quite a bit since I was last here.
Air Specialist Robinson of the RAF regiment describes life before the ceasefire.
You are lying face down flat with these sirens going off, with these noises overhead, and you hear impacts, you hear weapons of destruction going off around you, and it's bloody difficult.
At the height of the conflict, the base was targeted by up to 28 drones and missiles in a day.
Just to give you a sense of the threat here, just the British side of the base, not the US, the British side of the base, they've shot down more than 100 drones in just over a month using this system called Rapid Sentry.
It's a great feeling. It's a proper adrenaline buzz.
The young RAF gunners who operate the system, which looks like Robocop with missiles for arms, have less than a minute to detect, track and destroy the drones.
We had 14 drones in one night. That was a consistent engagement of just getting in, put a missile on the tube, whack out again, fire, back in. But the tempo, even during the day, when you expect them to attack at night, is still high.
Have you had any close shaves?
Yeah, quite a few, yeah. I can't really go into specifics, but we've had a few close encounters, yeah. Us and the Americans have. There was one after the other, and there was no break. So this ceasefire is a nice break for us, yeah.
This brief visit was only possible because of the ceasefire. An opportunity for the Defence Minister and RAF Chief to pass on their praise.
I would argue this place would be a smouldering wreck if it wasn't for you guys.
And to counter President Trump's claim, the UK's been missing in action. Al Carnes is the Armed Forces Minister.
We've helped move Americans out of harm's way, we've helped protect them, and they've helped protect us. This is a defensive posture from our perspective. We'll stay in that defensive posture, but the relationship is strong.
The US and UK were here working together long before this war started. But their primary mission, the fight against ISIS, is now focused on survival.
And that was the BBC's defence correspondent Jonathan Beale reporting from that military base in the Middle East. This is NewsHour. Coming up on the programme, as Sabrina Carpenter and Madonna release their new single, we'll ask what makes a great duet.
Between the two of them, especially from Bowie's end, just kind of makes that work, you know?
I have to say there was a little bit of consternation among some of the more seasoned members of the NewsHour office over whether indeed that was a great duet or not. But anyway, in one person's estimation, it was a rather great missed artistic opportunity. Nonetheless, we'll be reflecting on artistic duets and what make them work in about 30 minutes. This is NewsHour. It's live from the BBC World Service. I'm Tim Franks. We got two stories about jeans to bring you today. That's jeans, G-E-N-E-S, rather than the sort you wear. In about 20 minutes, we'll be paying tribute to the man once described as the bad boy of biology, who helped first map the entire human genome. Before that, some new analysis of ancient genomes, which has challenged some conventional wisdom, not so much in science as in history. In this case, that the collapse of the Roman Empire 1600 years ago or so led to barbarian hordes overrunning Western Europe. Kyle Harper is an historian at the University of Oklahoma. He's author of The Fate of Rome, Climate, Disease and the End of Empire. So how far does this study challenge the idea of that barbarian rampage across northwestern Europe?
It's old hat, and now we can see it with new kinds of evidence, and particularly with human DNA, which is a really exciting new frontier for those of us who work in history and archaeology. And what this new study does is add another piece of the puzzle that helps us see that any idea that the Roman Empire creates a really impermeable frontier, and that holds its own until sometime, after 400, and then all of a sudden breaks down and gives way to a wave of barbarians isn't credible.
Yeah. So, in other words, scientific backup to theories of history that you and others have been positing for some time, and that sort of end the idea of neat compartmentalization of history, which is so attractive and so misleading. I suppose there are still questions, though, over sort of why and how people from barbarian tribes did spread across Western Europe.
Right. And I think that this paper belongs to a wave of studies over the last few years that do indicate that there was a lot of migration. People were moving around. It's just that a lot of that migration predates the breakdown of the frontier. And this does include people from Northern Europe who probably speak an ancestor of the German language, who are coming into the Roman world. Many of them are probably very highly Romanized. Many of them probably are Romans and certainly probably think of themselves as Romans before the frontier itself collapses. And so it's another reminder that the Roman Empire itself moves people around and creates mechanisms for migration long before the frontier falls.
Do you think that, part of the issue here is actually, I'm talking about amateurs such as me, that the word barbarian conjures such sort of pejorative overtones of sort of uncouth, uncultured, aggressive, sort of almost unhygienic, it lends itself to the idea that they must have been so distinct from the Roman Empire.
Right. Well, that's what the Romans want you to believe, I think. So that stereotype goes back a long way, and it's certainly true that there are important cultural and technological and social differences in the way people are living on one part of Europe or another. But those change, and those in many ways converge. And by the later Roman period, it can sometimes be amazing how similar culturally and socially people were on what we may think of, if you draw a line on a map and say that's where the frontier was, by the later Roman period, that's not a very reliable indicator of where civilization stopped and barbarism began. And the genetic studies just give us this amazing new insight on it that's almost sort of from the ground up. And what this paper does is even reconstruct kind of the family history, and you can see people intermarrying, and that's what's so powerful about the human genome, is you can retrace the family dynamics down to the individual level, and you can see people who have different ancestry marrying.
That was Carl Harper, historian at the University of Oklahoma, author of The Fate of Rome, Climate, Disease and the End of Empire, on that latest research analysing the DNA of more than 200 individuals buried in cemeteries in southern Germany, starting from the year about 450 of the Common Era. Finding their genomes pointed to a melting pot of soldiers, farmers and barbarians instead of that single mass migration event from Northern Europe that Carl Harper suggested that the Romans maybe wanted us to think about. Sport as a spectacle only works when it grabs attention, so it makes sense that attempts are now being made to reshape the world of sport for the algorithm, with new formats emerging for quick, shareable moments online. From influencers managing sport teams to bite-sized versions of traditional games like three-a-side football, more sports are fighting for the attention of younger fans. But is it working? And is it bringing in the money? The BBC's Matt Lyons has been taking a look.
What is Baller League anyway? All right. We've got a brand new football league that's changing the game. Baller League is coming to the UK.
The best part of hockey is going global. Introducing the 3-Ice World Cup.
From football to ice hockey, cricket to basketball, sports all around the world are now rolling out new, faster, more action-packed versions of their games, all designed to be shorter, sharper and hard to ignore. One of the newest of these formats is tennis's 1 Point Slam, an event at the Australian Open where professionals and amateurs play in matches of a single point, with the winner going home with 1 million Australian dollars.
Oh my goodness me! He's won $1 million!
Lawrence Robertson is the tournament director of the event.
We completely outperformed all of the metrics we set ourselves in terms of community reach, domestic audience reach. As we sit here now in March with 9 months to go until next year's Australian Open, we're already in fairly advanced talks with brands and partners about who want to get involved with the 1 Point Slams.
And it's not just about shortening the game and making them ideal for TikTok or Instagram. It's also getting names involved who have big social media followings. It started in boxing, with YouTubers getting in the ring to battle it out against each other, and now it's moved to football with the Baller League, a six-a-side football tournament pitting non-professionals against each other in 30-minute games, with the teams managed by the likes of former Premier League greats Alan Shearer and Ian Wright. There's also a host of influencers and YouTubers involved, including KSI and Angry Ginge. Felix Stark is the CEO of the Baller League.
So of course, our audience is younger than the Premier League's audience, and 80% of our viewing is between 20 and 35. That's our biggest chunk of audience. Maybe the Premier League right now is losing audience year in, year out, and we're gaining audience year in, year out.
I asked Chris Beer, senior data journalist at GWI, to take a look at the numbers for me to see if these formats are attracting new audiences.
Fans of Baller League, Kings League, these are almost all football fans. So I wouldn't say that this is getting new people into the sport, but serving an existing audience in a new way.
But is this all just a flash-in-the-pan trend, or does it have a long-term future?
I think it's probably necessary innovations is what they are. If you want to attract a younger audience, you've maybe got to do it in a different way. And the gamification of the experience, which maybe I'm responsible for in my past life, I don't know.
Peter Moore is the former CEO of Liverpool FC, and a man who knows a thing or two about innovation and attracting younger audiences from his time as head of EA Sports and overseeing Xbox at Microsoft.
Look, if they're built for just clicks, they'll fade and die. Traditional sports are multi-generational. My dad was a Red. My granddad was a Red in Liverpool, thank goodness. I had no choice, right? I'm a Red. These peripheral sports that we're seeing now, they need to have that substance and that longevity and that sustainability. So you've got them year after year. They can't come in and disappear. You'd like to think some of these shorter formats are going to be around in 10 years, but I'm not sure, because it just feels sometimes like they're built to be controversial. They're built for TikTok. They're built for clicks and engagement. They're not built for sustainability and substance.
And that was Peter Moore ending that report from Matt Lines. You're listening to NewsHour. Welcome back to NewsHour. In a few minutes, we'll have reaction to an Australian report into last year's anti-Semitic mass shooting at Bondi Beach.
We have to create a situation where the Jewish community can gather again in public and exhibit their faith without fear of being slaughtered. And there's no single report or single policy that's going to get us there. It's going to be a long, challenging road.
More on that in just a few minutes. Before that, though, rebels in Mali appear to be closing in on the capital Bamako, or at least tightening their control of access to the capital of this West African country. Abdallah, he would rather that we didn't give his full name on air, is a resident of Bamako, and I asked him to give us a sense of what life is like in the capital right now.
Well, right now, today, we are at peace. We don't have any sense of panic. As you have previously mentioned, during the past weekend, we had a terror attack on here where our Ministry of Defense has passed away. But all the terrorists been contained during the weekend. And currently, we are not experiencing anything except a curfew that is going on here.
And are people calm? I mean, are you seeing people going out and trying to buy as much as they can from the shops? That type of thing. What's your sense of the atmosphere?
That happened during the weekend, where we had some people trying to rush by, but the president has addressed the nation 2 days ago. Since then, the calm has been restored.
Is there confidence in this government? I mean, after all, You know, this military junta, it came to power a few years ago by saying that the previous rulers weren't up to the job of dealing with the jihadist rebels. Are people retaining confidence in this group of rulers?
Well, currently right now, security-wise, people are really confident to them because the last government had very much issues with terrorism, especially in the northern part of Mali. But right now, we can say with very much confidence that the whole country is under one banner, and the population, security-wise, have a lot of confidence in the government currently.
Right. I'm surprised, slightly surprised, I have to say, to hear you say that, given how far the rebels, I mean, both the jihadists and also the Tuareg separatists, how far they have made inroads in other parts of the country.
Well, it was worse before, because before they were infiltrated everywhere, but now the main issue of the fight is that before they used to control the areas without being prevalently outside and claiming it, but underneath you will see that the rebels are the ones that are controlling the cities. But Paul came, they started reaching them out. So that is why now we're seeing emerging fights.
And there was Abdallah, a resident of the Malian capital, Bamako. You're with the BBC World Service, and this is NewsHour, live from London. I'm Tim Franks. Last December, on Bondi Beach in Australia, a Hanukkah celebration, an outdoor event marking a Jewish festival, was ripped apart as two men opened fire. 15 people were killed in the anti-Semitic attack. Today, a high-level inquiry in Australia reported back on what went wrong and what warnings were missed, and what changes needed to be made in the future. Similar questions have followed the latest anti-Semitic attack the other side of the world in London, with the stabbing of two Jewish men in North London on Wednesday. Those familiar questions, which tend to be variations on what can be done and what should be done. The senior British minister with responsibility for all this, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, told the BBC that the duty of everyone lay beyond just pouring more money into policing and security and prosecuting hate speech.
I think it is so important that every part of our society, people from every background, take a stand against the hatred that we are seeing against the Jewish community. We must act in solidarity, and it's so important that we remember what you want for yourself is what you should want for other people. When I take the stand that I am taking against anti-Semitism, I am doing so as a practicing Muslim. It is absolutely in line with my faith. We are all human beings at the end of the day, and what I want for all of our citizens, our Jewish citizens and Muslim and others, is safety and security and the freedom of this land being a land that belongs to all of us.
Which is an idea from the British Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, which I picked up with our next guest, Alex Rivchin, the co-chief executive of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry. But before that, I did have to get his reaction to the official commission of inquiry into the Bondi Beach mass shooting and the recommendations, among other things, for how security for Jewish communities could be improved.
We view it as a step in a very important process. Obviously, after Bondi, the Jewish community was shattered. The country was brought to its lowest point, and we have to climb out of it. We have to restore some semblance of social cohesion and harmony. We have to create a situation where the Jewish community can gather again in public and exhibit their faith without fear of being slaughtered. And there's no single report or single policy that's going to get us there. It's going to be a long, challenging road. But this report hands down some recommendations which we think will have an impact on how security information is gathered and shared between agencies, how resources are allocated to policing. These are good things, but they don't provide complete solutions, and they don't answer the questions that emerged after Bondi, specifically about the radicalization of the two killers, about why they weren't picked up, even though they were on watch lists, and why they were allowed to travel abroad to terrorist hotspots. There's a lot of questions to be answered still, but we hope that by the end of the Royal Commission process, we'll have those answers and begin to move forward and heal.
In terms of security, in terms of the sort of day-to-day policing and guarding of the Australian Jewish community, of synagogues and schools and events and so forth, have you seen a change since December?
Yeah, look, we had very high levels of policing and security before that, so it's really always been in place. And it was escalated severely after October 7 and the eruption of anti-Semitism in this country. But it's gone to whole new levels again since Bondi. And you've now got a situation where outside Jewish schools and synagogues, there's a permanent police presence. The visibility of police in what you would call Jewish neighborhoods has gone up as well. But there's also a concern in the community that that's not going to hold, that eventually news cycles move on, police resources are limited, and eventually I think people will forget about this and maybe move on to other priorities. And that's what creates a real sense of danger. And I think with Bondi, there was an element of that where the spate of fire bombings that we had over the summer, which targeted my former home and targeted synagogues and childcare centres, that seemed to have passed by. And I think some people perhaps took their eye off the ball and underestimated the urgency of the situation.
There are some people, though, who argue that it's not just about measures such as changing legislation on, for example, hate speech and better policing, more intelligence work on those who are being radicalised. It's something much, much broader about people across society just thinking about what are the values that they want to stand up for. And I just wonder if that's something that you think, I mean, it's incredibly difficult to lay down rules, but I just wonder if it's something that you have been wrestling with.
No, look, I'm a firm believer in that. And the law, I think, is limited in what it can accomplish. Legislation is all good and well, but it doesn't cure all of society's ills. Long term, the Jewish people have a real problem, and that's the fact that we're numerically minuscule. And in a country like Australia, where you have 25 million people and 100,000 Jews, the vast majority of Australians don't know a Jewish person. They've never interacted with them. And in that ignorance, if I could call it that, or lack of interaction, that's where mythology and conspiracy theories and malevolence thrives.
Alex, I know that you've spent several years living in London, and I'm talking to you the day after 2 Jewish men were stabbed in North London. Do you think there is a read across to the sort of trauma that you endured in Australia?
It saddens me greatly, and I spent 5 years in London. I love that city. I lived one tube stop down from Golders Green. And it really pains me to see what's happening, but also to see the day-by-day deterioration and escalation, which is precisely what was happening in Australia. Like, the parallels are startling. And we warned our government that someone's going to get killed. And I listened to the words coming out of Jewish leaders, my friends and counterparts in the UK and the British Board of Deputies, and they're exactly what we were saying months ago. And I listened to the words from British leaders, from the Prime Minister and others about this is not who we are and, you know, we support our Jewish community. That's exactly what was being said in the Australian leadership as well. And there comes a point where you may say it's not who you are, but if the Jewish community is being repeatedly vilified and harassed and pushed out and then stabbed and burned and things like this are happening, it does become a part of who you are. It becomes a part of the national character. And unless there's a mass movement of the good and decent to drive this hatred away, someone's going to get killed. There's no doubt about that.
And that was Alex Rivchin, the co-chief executive of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry. The man who played a big part in one of the most significant scientific achievements of this century, and perhaps of many other centuries, the biologist Craig Venter, has died at the age of 79. He was a key figure in the decoding of the human genome. It was 26 years ago that the then President of the United States, Bill Clinton, stood before a podium in the White House and introduced what he called, without a doubt, the most important map ever produced.
We are here to celebrate the completion of the first survey of the entire human genome. Without a doubt, this is the most important, most wondrous map ever produced by humankind. The moment we are here to witness was brought about through brilliant and painstaking work of scientists all over the world, including many men and women here today.
And standing beside President Clinton on that day when that complete set of genetic instructions contained within human cells was unfurled, as it were, on that major day in the history of science was Dr. J. Craig Venter.
One of the wonderful discoveries that my colleagues and I have made while decoding the DNA over 24 species, from viruses to bacteria to plants to insects and now human beings, is that we're all connected to the commonality of the genetic code and evolution. When life is reduced to its very essence, we find that we have many genes in common with every species on Earth, and that we are not so different from one another. You may be surprised to learn that your sequencers are greater than 90% identical to proteins in other animals. It's my belief that the basic knowledge that we're providing the world will have a profound impact on the human condition and the treatments for disease and our view on our place in the biological continuum. The genome sequence represents a new starting point for science and medicine with potential impact on every disease.
Craig Venter speaking 26 years ago. John Hardy is a professor of neuroscience and group leader at the UK Dementia Research Institute, the DRI, at University College London. He knew Craig Venter and told me he considered him a friend.
Yes, I did. He was he was a big character and a great scientist.
Is big character a euphemism?
No. I've really enjoyed interacting with him. No, it's not a euphemism. He was a big character for sure.
But he did rub some people up the wrong way, didn't he?
You know, that's true. But honestly, I look back and I think how much I learned from my interaction with him. You know, genetics used to be, I would call it a cottage industry, where every genetics group was like a corner shop. And Craig was one of the first. There were a couple of others too. The guys at the Sanger Centre in the UK, the guys at the Broad Institute in the States, and at Francis Collins at the NIH, who realised the same things at about the same time. But they really changed genetics from being a corner shop operation to a major semi-industrial operation. They changed science, and it was fun, and it was honestly, I look back and I think, how much did I learn from my interactions with him?
And of course, how vastly important it was. I wasn't being entirely sort of snide and gossipy when I talked about his character, though, because, I mean, there was a suggestion that actually it took somebody like Craig Venter, obviously he wasn't operating on his own, but it took a character like that to just sort of shake things up a bit, because, I mean, in his words, he said at the time, I think, that the scientific community is conservative, it can be parochial, what you were saying about a sort of, the corner shop, and that he sort of drove a sort of a tearing sense of ambition to this whole thing, didn't he?
That's exactly right. And the outcome has been the human genome sequence, which has absolutely, as we heard being promised there, it has actually transformed what we know about human disease. So maybe you could say to make an omelette, you need to break through a few eggs. Maybe that's true. But honestly, the omelette is delicious. We're learning so much because of the foundational work he was a big part of.
Yeah. And I mean, absolutely, the implications of us understanding the human genome and being able to sequence it have been utterly staggering. It was also true, though, wasn't it, that back then, I mean, 3 decades ago, it looked as if it was just going to be a sort of almost insuperable thing, because it's just such a sort of vast sequence of letters that had to be slogged through.
Yes, 3 times 10 to the 9. And it took years and years and years to get the full sequence. And now, for example, here at the DRI, we're sequencing a genome every day. So the technologies have changed. And actually, the work that Craig did was part of driving the technology change, which we have now. So yes, it was transformative in terms of our knowledge, but also the whole process has allowed us to really develop technologies which allow us to understand humanity and human variability much more in a much deeper way.
Friend of the pioneering biologist Craig Venter. That was Sir John Hardy. You're with the BBC World Service, and this is NewsHour, live from London. 1 week today, millions of voters in the United Kingdom will go to the polls for elections to the Scottish and Welsh Parliament and to local government in England. Some 30 million people are eligible to vote, so the elections will be easily the biggest test of the public mood across Britain since Labour's landslide victory in the general election in June 2024. Polling suggests that Labour will suffer massive losses, as will the country's other main party, the Conservatives. The likely beneficiaries will be nationalists in Scotland and Wales, the Green Party on the populist left, and Reform on the populist right. Our political correspondent Rob Watson now reports on the turmoil in British politics, beginning in Pontypridd in Wales.
Good morning. Hello. How are you? Fine, thank you. I'm Helen. I'm Plaid Cymru.
Here in Pontypridd, Hela Fychan of the left-of-centre Welsh Nationalist Party Plaid Cymru is out campaigning in this former mining town. Plaid is hoping and expecting to end Labour's 100-year-old grip on power here in Wales, something that until recently would have seemed utterly improbable. So why are voters deserting Labour and the Conservatives? I'm heading into the centre of town to ask around.
I think politics is just so divisive. It's this horrible politics that just all they do is run each other down. And I think the thing is with Labour and Conservative, yes, they've always been the two most popular parties. But over the last 20, 30 years, they've achieved very little. And I think people are cottoning on to that fact.
I think people just want to change because once they get up, they promise everything but deliver nothing.
That's Labour and Conservative.
Labour and Conservative parties. So let's give somebody else a try. Why not? We've got nothing to lose.
Because they haven't done nothing for Pontypridd. They haven't done nothing for us. That's all Labour wants to do is they're not for the working man. They're just taking us and taxing us all the time. And the other thing is immigration. Why should they come over here on small boats and then have money given to them? Keir Starmer should be shot. You know, he shouldn't allow it.
That was just a sample of voices here in Wales. For a more data-based analysis of what's driving voter anger and their desertion of the two main parties, I'm heading off to London to see Sophie Stowers of the public opinion research agency More in Common. What are the underlying forces driving this volatility and anger, Sophie?
They're actually quite uniform across voters, regardless of the political direction they're going in. So I think fundamentally trust is a big one. People don't feel like politicians deliver on their promises. They say anything to get elected. Exhaustion, so the cost of living crisis. People feel like completely exhausted by that. They feel like they're just surviving, not living, just sort of working to just scrape by. Then I think you've got agency. They feel like they don't have control over their own lives. You know, an energy bill rise could knock them completely off course for the month. And also just actually government doesn't have the fundamental control or agency to get stuff done, to make fundamental decisions about things like our borders, for example. That's a really contentious one. And then finally, threat. So people feel like the world is becoming increasingly unstable, and actually things like immigration, like social cohesion, integration are increasingly destabilising what people think is their usual way of life, and that really frightens people and is driving them to more radical political directions. Back to the elections, the likely results, if the polling is right, are that the pro-independent Scottish National Party retains power in Scotland, Plaid Cymru becomes the biggest party in Wales, and that populists of the right and left, namely Reform and the Greens, make big gains in England as well. So what would this actually mean for the current Labour government and the future of politics in Britain more generally? A question for politics professor John Curtis.
Labour MPs are already, many of them, doubtful about Keir Starmer's ability to lead them to victory at the next election in 2029. If Labour do as badly as the polls suggest, then those doubts are going to be accentuated. Meanwhile, more broadly, given that the Conservatives are also expected to do badly, these results could well provide further evidence that Britain's two-party system, that system is now under fundamental challenge and may no longer survive.
So potentially a dizzying cocktail of political volatility lies ahead, whether in terms of challenges to the Prime Minister, to the two-party system, or even to the constitutional settlement from nationalists in Scotland and Wales. And all of that driven by an unhappy electorate searching for answers that the politicians here in Westminster seem unable to provide.
And that was our political correspondent Rob Watson. That's it from this edition of NewsHour. From me, Tim Franks, and the team here in London. Thank you very much for your company.